We begin our study of trigonometry with a little introduction to angles and their measures. All right. So, first thing is just what is an angle? All right. Now, it's weird here the way you get the definition of angle. It's not really a definition, right? It's just saying how an angle is formed, right? I'm not really giving you a definition. I'm just telling you how an angle is formed. So angles are formed by rotating a ray about its endpoint. So if you recall rays from geometry class, a ray is basically half of a line. So we have our endpoint, and it's actually a little bit ironic because it's really like a starting point, but it's called the endpoint. And then what happens is you go infinitely in one direction, right? So this would be called a ray, all right? So an angle is formed by rotating this ray about its endpoint. So if you hold the endpoint steady, right, you keep it there, and then you rotate this ray, you end up with what we call, wow, not very straight, right, an angle. So this would be your angle, okay? And what ends up happening is the starting side, right, the starting position of the ray right here, that would be called the initial side. And where it ends up is called the terminal side. And the end point of the ray is known as the vertex of the angle, right? So we've got the vertex, which is the end point of the ray, the initial side, which is where it starts from, and the terminal side, which is where it ends up. Okay? So that's a basic angle. All right, so in geometry class, usually angles would just kind of in the middle of nowhere, right? You would just have the angles floating around somewhere in space, right? Now, once you get into trigonometry in general, a lot of times you're going to sketch angles in what's known as standard position, okay? Now, what is standard position? It just means that the initial side of the angle is going to be the positive x-axis. So whenever you're going to sketch an angle in standard position, what you're going to do is you're going to draw a set of axes like this and say, all right, here's my x-axis, here's my y-axis. So the positive x-axis is this, right? That's where x is positive. So this is going to be the initial side of the angle, all right? So an angle in standard position would be something like that. So there's your angle in standard position because the initial side is the positive x-axis, right? Again, this is the initial side. And that's why it's important the direction that I draw this arrow, right? I draw the arrow from the initial side to the terminal side. Okay? And as far as naming angles go, usually angles are named with Greek letters. So you might call this one theta. And then maybe I'll draw another angle in standard position. And now, and you don't have to do this in different colors, I'm just doing it, you know, for effect, kind of to show you what's going on here. Here's another angle maybe that goes like this, right? So that would be another angle in standard position. And again, this would be the initial side. And this would be the terminal side. I forgot the R there in terminal, but it's okay, right? The initial side and the terminal side, and this would be the angle here. And maybe you would call this one alpha, right? Because I say you're going to name them with Greek letters. Usually theta alpha, maybe beta, gamma is another one. All right. Now, one thing that you should notice about the two angles that I sketched here is the first one I rotated counterclockwise, whereas the second one I rotated clockwise. So if you rotate counterclockwise, the angle is going to be positive. If I rotate clockwise, the angle is going to be negative. Right? And again, that's something that's different from what you probably had dealt with in geometry classes. Right? You never had anything that was called a negative angle. Right? But it's all about the direction of rotation. Okay? So if you rotate counterclockwise, it's a positive angle. If you rotate clockwise, it's going to be a negative angle.